Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We have an amazing panel of experts here to talk to you all. It's been really challenging for us to see these attacks on trans people in this country, particularly trans youth, being particularly vulnerable when all they're trying to do is live their lives. And so the major issues we're going to be discussing tonight, really getting into with our experts, both from the National Center for Transgender Equality, and from our friends at GLSEN, whose whole mission is to help make schools a safe, welcoming, affirming place for LGBTQ students. So we are thrilled to have them and for all of you to listen in. So we are going to start things off by talking about Title IX, the historic law that aimed to address disparities in students' access to programs and to fair schooling based on the basis of sex and how that's going to affect trans kids. So we are going to get into it. And I am so excited. So we are going to bring on our amazing policy director at Ncte, Olivia Hunt. Welcome, Olivia.
Thank you, Tekla. Hello, everyone. I'm Olivia Hunt, she and her pronouns. I'm policy director at National Center for Transgender Equality. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the context of why we're having this conversation tonight. Over the past several years, we've seen anti-LGBTQ extremists across the country focusing their attacks on harming transgender and non-binary youth and their families. That got a lot of attention this past state legislative season, the first half of the year, with legislative and policy attacks coming in more than 35 states. We tracked more than 200 anti-trans pieces of anti-trans legislation, most of which were directly harming transgender youth and their families in some way. In addition to that, we saw a lot of state governments taking administrative action outside of the legislative process to attack trans people in really appalling ways. The most notable of those that got a lot of attention nationwide was Texas's efforts to weaponize their child protective services system to go after the supportive families of trans youth. But we've also seen recently in Florida, the state government trying to change the regulations around Medicaid to bar Medicaid coverage for transgender people's transition-related care, and now attempting to sanction doctors who provide transition-related care to trans people of all ages. But we've also seen legislation targeting children directly. Probably, again, most famously, Florida's Don't Say Gay or Trans bill that went into effect earlier this year that tries to erase trans and other queer students and their families from the classroom. And on top of that, we saw bills attacking access to healthcare, access to participation in extracurricular activities, access to ability to correct the gender marker on birth certificates and other identity documents all across the country. The federal government right now is engaged in a rulemaking process to change the regulations about how they apply Title IX of the Civil Rights Act, the education and athletics portion of U.S. federal civil rights law. What we're doing right now, what we're seeing right now is an opportunity for the public to weigh in on how important it is to have regulations in place that are going to provide meaningful, solid, and reliable protections for trans people in education, from kindergarten through to college. To go into a little bit more detail about what's in these proposed regulations and how you can get involved, I'm going to hand things over to Bonnie Washik from GLSEN and my Ncte colleague, Alexis Rangel, who will go into a bit more detail.
All right, thank you so much, Olivia, for that context. There really is so much happening right now and terrible things happening to kids in these states, and that's why I'm really glad to see movement on the federal protection side. So thank you so much for that. Hey, Alexis, welcome, and Bonnie from GLSEN. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And what I wanted to give you all the chance to speak to is that we know, as Olivia started to mention, that there's a Title IX comment portal right now where folks can really raise their voices and make a difference by leaving a comment supporting these new regulations. And with all these attacks that Olivia mentioned toward LGBTQ youth around the country, I want to know if you guys would tell us why this rule is so important.
Yeah, so happy to hop in. My name is Bonnie Washek, pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm GLSEN's federal policy manager. Really so grateful to Ncte for organizing this, for partnering with us on the comment portal and also on our comment letter. You know, to put it simply, all students deserve the freedom to be themselves and to pursue their dreams. They should have equal access and opportunities to learn, thrive, and reach their full potential in K-12 schools. Our research institute, GLSEN's Research Institute, has found, however, that nearly 3 in 5 LGBTQI+ students and more than 75% of transgender students experience discrimination because of their sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression in schools. And these attacks on their freedoms look like being prevented from using the bathroom or the locker room that matches their gender identity, being disciplined simply because they identify as LGBTQI+, or being misgendered and dead named. And we know that LGBTQI+ students who are Black, Indigenous, and students of color, and those who are disabled face discrimination in multiple ways at once, and that this is reflected in things like more frequent and more severe school discipline. And we also know that for all of these students, that experiencing discrimination is associated with lower levels of self-esteem, higher levels of depression, all the things that are bad and that should not happen. And as Olivia shared, Title IX is this key federal civil rights law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of someone's sex in federally funded education programs and activities. And that includes all public K-12 schools, charter schools, and all private schools that accept federal funds, which is a lot of private schools. The language of Title IX and decades of people using this law make it clear that discrimination on the basis of sex is included there. That discrimination on the basis of sex includes discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, and other sex stereotypes. But this has never been written into this rule. So we really, the reason we're gathered here to talk about this is that this is a real big change, and it would correct this omission and make it clear in the plain language in the rule that anti-LGBTQ+ discrimination and harassment is against the law in our schools, and that if it happens, schools have to respond to it quickly and effectively. And students shouldn't have to wait for justice. So we think this is really critically important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it touches so many parts of those kids' experience in school for their whole lives. And Alexis, I also want to make sure that that you could weigh in on this question too. And if there's anything you want to point out, kind of about this change and how it would really help secure protections for kids. And then we'll also talk about, for folks watching, what they can do to get involved.
Absolutely. So hello, everyone. My name is Alexis Rangel, pronouns are she, they, policy counsel with the National Center for Transgender Equality, and the one leading our advocacy efforts regarding education and for anyone, any trans and non-binary folks who are touched by the education system, which includes not just students, but parents and teachers that are involved and engaged with the educational system, as well as administrators. And I can't lift up enough everything that Bonnie said in the framing that Bonnie put in place. This year, Title IX turned 50 years. So for 50 years, this law has been in place trying to address sex discrimination. And over the course of many years, there's been changes. There's been changes in the regulations, some of which have been really fantastic, and some of which, such as the ones that happened under the last administration, pulled back and left students vulnerable in a lot of ways. And so the Biden administration has been working on, particularly the Department of Education, has been working on this package of changes since they came into office, has been listening to stakeholders, holding sessions for the better part of a year, a little over a year. working on what these changes could be. And as Bonnie pointed out, the changes that are in these regulations recognize existing law as it has already been interpreted and as it is in use in a lot of places, but just making it explicitly clear within the regulations so that every administrator, every educational institution that's impacted this knows exactly what their obligations are. And the protections that are in there, that are in these regulations for LGBTQI+ students and for others in the educational sphere, that's not the only thing that's in these proposed regulations. These regulations also touch on sexual harassment changes to make sure that that system is stronger, include protections for pregnant students. But here we do today want to very specifically focus on the impacts for the trans and non-binary and intersex community, which will be explicitly protected under these new regulations, which is why we really need to engage as a community and make sure that these regulations have the public weighing in and letting the administration know that these protections are absolutely necessary for all of our community that are involved with the education system at all, whether that's pre-K all the way through university.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and this opportunity for folks to get involved is really easy in a way, but really impactful, because the more people that we have speaking up, unfortunately, as both of you all have seen, and I'm sure a lot of folks watching have seen, there's so much extremism that gets directed online, these kind of online mobs that go after anything related to LGBTQ youth, and it's really frightening. So the chance that we have is to leave a comment on this portal, which we'll make sure you'll all have. I'll drop it in our comments, everything like that, so everybody watching can leave a comment. And then I wanted also to give you a chance, Alexis, to kind of talk about like why that's impactful, like sort of the government's process. That sounds a little bit boring, but does really have an impact.
Absolutely. So as we both mentioned, the administration has been working on these regulations, doing their research and talking to stakeholders for the better part of a year, and then announced in June what this proposed rule was going to be, and gave the public the opportunity to weigh in on these proposed regulations, gave advocacy organizations the chance to look at what they're proposing and to fashion our comments. We're very excited to have partnered with GLSEN in writing our response to the administration on these regulations, and working with a number of other organizations, including the National Women's Law Center and the ACLU, that are all commenting on these important improvements to the regulations as well. And so we're at a point in time where the administration is opening its ears to everyone across the country to get feedback and input and to get their thoughts. And the website's been live accepting comments from the public for a little over 2 months. And the comment period ends next week. And so we want to make sure that our voices are being heard. In particular, online, it can seem like there are so many people out there who are attacking our communities. But we know when we look at different research statistics, when we look at the US Transgender Survey, our most recent US Transgender Survey, that the vast majority of the country and the community supports trans folks and supports the safety and security of trans students, supports teachers as they're supporting their trans and non-binary and intersex students. And we think it's really, really important while the Department of Education is explicitly listening, that those voices, the anti-voices, aren't the only voices that they're hearing, and that they're hearing the support for these changes that already exist, and are already recognized by multiple courts, by multiple states, and other educational institutions. Emphasizing the importance and making sure that our community voices are heard right now in this moment as the administration is listening.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I think it really, when they hear so many negative things, that having those voices saying in support, which most people do, it's just getting folks to really like raise their voice and say that. Thank you both so much. This was fantastic. We are going to, we will come back and talk about Title IX a little bit more at the end, and make sure to answer folks' questions as well. But we are going to go ahead and move on to our other major campaign where folks can really make a huge difference. And it is similar. It is in leaving a comment and making your voice heard in that way. And to talk about that, we are going to welcome CP Hoffman, our Senior Policy Counsel at Ncte.
Hi, Tekla.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. So I am here to talk to you folks out there in Facebook or Twitter or YouTube land or wherever you happen to be watching us about the Protect Trans Health initiative that we are currently working on. I would be remiss if I did not mention our Protect Trans Health partners, the Transgender Law Center and the Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund, aka TLC and TILDEF. We also have over 100 other partner organizations that are assisting in the effort. So I'm not going to list all of them because that would take all the rest of our time. But we have many organizations out there helping us. So if any of you are from those organizations, thank you so much. So I'm going to step back a little and tell you what Protect Trans Health is about and what you can do to help. So you may have heard of this legislation from a few years ago called Obamacare. Officially the Affordable Care Act, but colloquially Obamacare.
The
Now,
artist formerly known as Obamacare.
The artist formerly known as Obamacare, yes. The legislation formerly known as, yeah. Anyway, so one of the provisions of the Affordable Care Act, aka the ACA, it's officially Section 1557 of the Affordable Care Act, is a provision that requires any organization receiving federal funds for healthcare to not discriminate against individuals on a number of bases, including race, sex, disability, age, etc. So based on sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So in 2015, the Obama administration issued regulations under Section 1557 that were designed to clarify what discrimination included. And those regulations said this includes discriminating against transgender folks in access to healthcare or health insurance. And the regulations were quite good for 2015. They actually went into effect in 2016, but they were first promoted in 2015. They included a lot of specific protections requiring insurance companies to cover transition-related care, prohibiting healthcare providers from discriminating against trans patients, et cetera, et cetera. They also did a lot of other great things. I'm just going to focus on the trans-specific elements of the 2016 and the 2022 rules now. Just because, again, we only have so much time, and our conversation tonight is focused on trans kids, so that seems what I should focus on. So those went into effect in 2016, and unsurprisingly, when the Trump administration came into power in early 2017, they quickly said, we're not really enforcing these, and then they spent the next 3 years working on regulations to revoke them. In late 2019, they issued proposed regulations that basically repealed the Obama-era regulations. And then in 2020, it was June of 2020, they issued their final regulations that repealed all of the protections that Obama and Biden had put in 2016. Now, by a fun coincidence, that came out on, I want to say, a Friday afternoon. And on Monday morning, of the next week, we had the Supreme Court's decision in Bostock, which was the decision a couple of years ago that found that the Civil Rights Act protections against employment discrimination extended to sexual orientation and gender identity. So basically, relying on the Bostock decision for there are a number of organizations that challenged the 2020 Trump regs, and that's basically been in litigation ever since. So there's sort of this there's been this fun question of like, what are the regs now? Who knows? I mean, I could tell you, and I could spend like an hour explaining like the very nuanced stuff. I'm not going to do that. It's boring. You don't want to hear that. Because what's important is that the like with the Title IX regulations, the Biden-Harris administration's Department of Health and Human Services has spent the last couple of years working on new regulations under Section 1557. And they released them at the very end of November. Sorry, not November, the very end of July slash the beginning of August. I don't know where November came from there.
Time isn't real anymore. It's okay. We all know this.
Yeah.
And recovering from the craziness of the Trump years too. It's just who knows what time it is.
Yeah. So they've been out just over a month, and we are in the midst of the public comment period on those rules. So that's what our Protect Trans Health project is about. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about the rules. I'm not going to go into all of them because I actually have a printout of the rules here, and as you can see, it is quite voluminous. It is about like 97 pages or something like that. So I'm not going to cover all of it. You don't want to hear all of it. I know that. You don't want to hear it.
They could have made it around 100 pages. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, they could have made it not 100 pages,
stuff.
but they didn't. And so now a lot of it is like the explanation of what the rules are going to do and like why they made decisions that they did, etc. The actual rules are like 10 or 15 pages at the back. But still, you don't want to hear me go over 15 pages of dry rules. So I'm going to sort of summarize some of the stuff that's, very exciting. So pretty much all of the protections that we had under the 2016 Obama era rules are back, which is fantastic. So there's all of these protections that specifically tell healthcare providers and health insurance companies that they have to cover transition-related care. They can't discriminate against trans people. If they provide care to cis people, they have to provide the same care to trans people. They can't just be like, oh, well, you're trans, so we're not going to do this for you, even though we do it for, the cis. There's a lot of very specific protections. And then one thing that's pretty exciting that, I would love it if the language were a little tighter, but one thing I'm very excited about is a provision under the rules for healthcare providers that says that the existence of a state policy that says that transition-related care is never medically necessary is not justification for discriminating and not providing services. So basically, that's the Department of Health and Human Services coming out and saying, hey, just because a state says that you shouldn't provide this doesn't mean that you cannot provide it. You're still required to do so under federal non-discrimination law. So that's really exciting. I'm looking forward to see how that's going to be enforced because, it could be enforced very broadly or it could be enforced not as broadly. And that sort of depends on what, the leadership in HHS ends up doing. So that's sort of what the rules are. And I'm going to tell you where we are now with the process. They came out at the very end of July. They were officially published in the Federal Register on August 3rd. And then there's a 60-day public comment period where people like you can submit a public comment saying, these rules are important, or trans people are awesome and they deserve access to healthcare. Or you can tell your own story about, how you or someone close to you was discriminated against in access to healthcare, or how, access to healthcare helped make your life or the life of someone else better. So, lots of different things you can do. I'm going to talk about our portal in a second, but I see that Tekla has kindly put the link in the chat already. It is protecttranshealth.org. I will be repeating that 7 times. So the public comment period lasts through October 3rd. So if you want to make a public comment about transgender healthcare, you have until October 3rd, not October 4th. If you wait until October 4th, they will not read it. So the way that I'm going to tell you to remember that you have to do it by October 3rd is to think of Mean Girls and imagine that, I'm blanking on his name, but he turns to Lindsay Lohan and says, what day does my Protect Trans Health comments need to be in by? And then
Exactly.
Lindsay Lohan says, it's October 3rd.
October 3rd. I'm getting intelligence that the name of the cute guy in Mean Girls is Damien, which I also
No, Damien was the gay guy. It's Aaron Samuels.
Damien was the friend. Aaron Samuels. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I do.
Yes.
Such a good movie.
Thank you.
I did. All I could think was that the government gave us a great one with this, giving us October 3rd as the deadline.
I know.
Because everyone will hopefully remember, and I will post so many Mean Girls memes. Don't worry, guys. I'll make sure that we have that. It's so important, crucial part of the plan.
It really is. It really, truly is. So right now, we have gotten a number of great comments in from people. So if you've already submitted a comment, thank you. We love you and we love your stories. And Tekla has read a lot of them and has been telling me about them. I have personally not been reading them because I've been writing our institutional comment and sort of managing some other stuff. But from what I've heard from Tekla and some other members of the team, we're getting some fabulous stories from those of you out there in, I'll say, TV land.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And we're really grateful to folks that have left their comment and trusted their stories. I mean, we know that these are often, if they're a personal story, they're personal. It might be, we've heard from folks that really struggled at the doctor's office, who were turned away, denied care, who struggled to find a doctor, who stayed away from care because they were so worried as trans people they wouldn't be taken care of as they should be. So we're hearing those kinds of stories. And we're also hearing amazing stories about how gender affirming care makes such an incredible difference in people's lives, which is really heartening and beautiful. I think the comments that make me cry the most are from trans elders. We did get a story from a woman now in her 80s who talked about finally being able to feel at home in her body in her 80s. So it was really, really beautiful. And shows what a difference it makes for people. And the other really incredible story that we are seeing is from parents and friends and loved ones of trans people, really seeing how gender affirming care has made all the difference. One of our parents told us it was like the dimmer was taken off of my child and they were so bright. And I just loved that. It was so beautiful, so emotional. So yeah, these are really personal, but we also get comments from people who are like, I just care about people. I think everyone should have healthcare. And so when you go to leave your comment and when you hopefully go talk to people and tell them to leave a comment, because a lot of people I know watch the news and they're like, this is so upsetting. Like, what can I do? And this is something where you really can make your voice heard by leaving this comment. And it can be as short as you want. It can be as long as you want. But the number of people really, really makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And so on the number, and that's a fantastic segue, Tekla. Because right now what we're seeing is we've gotten some fantastic comments from the community through the protecttranshealth.org portal on its own. We've gotten about 2,600 comments so far. A number of other organizations also have their own portals, and then some people are just submitting directly through the regulations.gov portal. If you submit through protecttranshealth.org, we will then submit it into the regulations.gov portal, and it will be submitted, but we'll also be able to sort of track your stories and make sure that, you know, we are getting stories from people across the country, and it's really helpful to us to be able to identify what parts of the community we're missing, if we can sort of have a look at them before they go into the regulations.gov site. I will just throw out now before people ask, because we always get this question, what do you do with our data? So I will say that it is kept secure on a database that you have to have a password to get into. We're using these things only for the internal purposes of identifying stories that, or identifying demographics and parts of the community that we're missing. There is an option to share your story more broadly if you check that box, in which case, it's possible that we could reach out to you to be like, oh, do you want to talk to the media about your story? But if you don't check that box, then we will not do that. There's also a checkbox that will add you to our email list. But again, if you don't check that box, you don't have to. And then finally, you can also do stuff completely anonymously. You don't have to provide us your name. So, if you just want to tell your story and be like, or just be like, I support trans health, awesome. You don't have to sign up for an email list or anything else. And we won't have your info to track you down. And we certainly won't give that info to anyone else for any other purposes other than for protect trans health. So I just wanted to get that out there because we've got that question a few times. So numbers, yes, that's where I was before I got into the privacy.
Super important. Super important. I wanted to really emphasize that too, that privacy is so important to us, especially now with all of the attacks on trans people. So we are taking that really, really seriously. And there is an option you'll see when you go to Protect Trans Health and you'll scroll down, it'll give you some information about the campaign like we've told you, and you'll scroll down to the form and you'll see lots of spaces for information, but they're not mandatory. You don't have to fill them out. If you want to be anonymous, you can. But if you want to tell your story more widely, you do have the option to check either that it's okay to share your story anonymously. So even the stories I just kind of referenced for you guys, those were folks that said, yes, you can share anonymously. So we're taking it so seriously. I wouldn't even mention, I would never want someone to feel like their story was being told in a way that wasn't respectful of them and wasn't what they wanted. So that's so important to us. And then you do have the option to say that you're open to speaking with the media if you've had an experience that, or with your child, with yourself, with a loved one, you do have the opportunity to potentially speak to media. That's something where we would contact you first. We wouldn't throw you to reporters or anything like that immediately. But it does give folks who want to tell their story on a bigger stage, it gives you the opportunity to do it. And so if you're watching this and you know people who have gone through things that nobody should have to go through, or folks have faced struggles. I know some people have moved because of this. All those kinds of experiences we really want to highlight if folks are comfortable sharing. So we're grateful for that. And we do have a few thousand comments, but we're really hoping for more. So CP, did you want to say something else about the numbers?
I do want to say something else on the numbers. So yeah, we have gotten a good number of comments so far, but we need more, and here's why. So at the end of the day, the Department of Health and Human Services doesn't just have, it isn't like Anubis in the afterlife with the scales and they put the all the positive comments and all the negative comments and just see which is heavier. That's not how they decide whether to enact the final rule. But if there are a bajillion negative comments and 5 positive comments, that's going to affect what the final rule looks like. And right now, we're looking at a situation where we have significantly more negative comments that have been submitted through various portals than positive comments. And we really need to make sure that, there's representatives of the community, allies, etc., standing up and saying, non-discrimination and access to trans healthcare is important and critical, and I stand for this because if we have a situation where we are severely outnumbered at the end of the day, then it's going to look bad for the Department of Health and Human Services. It's going to look bad when these things are inevitably challenged in court, and it's going to look bad in the media. So please, please, please submit your comments saying that you support trans health. Again, it's at protecttranshealth.org. It will only take you 5 minutes, if that, if you just want to do a quick comment. If you want to do a longer story, it'll take you however long it takes to write out your story. But it's a very quick process if you just want to be like, I support trans healthcare. The transes are great. I love the transes. They should have access. Yeah, there you go. I literally just saw the comment in the Facebook chat that says, I support trans health. So yes. So, it's an easy process, but please do your part to help us, and please share with people because again, if we can get those numbers up, it will really help on the back end. And it's a small thing that doesn't take a lot of time, but that can have a huge impact on the state of the law. And what's great here is that it's a lot of times, we're like, oh yeah, so this is how the world is kind of shit for trans people, and we're fighting, and we don't necessarily have a follow-up of what you can do. This time we have a follow-up of what you can do. You can go to protecttranshealth.org and you can submit your comment and help to protect trans health.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you guys. I see folks commenting. They support trans health. I love that. Definitely.
Go to protecttranshealth.org and say it there. Not
say it
just
there. Tell the government to. Yeah, tell them. They need to know. They need to know what a big deal it is. And the more, like CP mentioned, the more that we can spread the word both about this, and then for any folks who join us a little bit later, we're also here talking about Title IX and how those regulations are being updated by the Biden administration to help protect LGBTQ youth and intersex youth. And how important those are as well. But it just makes such a huge difference for people to actually raise their voices and do something. So, let them know, drop the protecttranshealth.org in your family group chat, with your friends, on your Twitter, on your Facebook, wherever you are, what a difference it makes, because a lot of people will say, oh God, this is horrible, but not really know what to do. But this really does really help us. Makes a huge difference. And I think we will, in a moment, we'll circle back to some Title IX questions and then kind of go into some more Q&A stuff. I saw some questions from folks that we'll be able to explore. And I just want to give you the chance, CP, if you wanted to add anything else.
The last thing I would say is just please also, I would be remiss if I did not say, please also go and comment on the Title IX portal. I don't have the full address for that because it was like GLSEN something /T9. It's in the comments, yeah. But please comment on both, and it should only, if they're short comments, it'll only take you 10 minutes to do both, and it'll be fast. And 10 minutes of your life to help protect trans kids, that's not too much to ask.
Yeah, it's huge. It makes such difference. And so on that note, thank you so much, CP. And we will bring back on Bonnie from GLSEN and also Alexis from Ncte. And I wanted to give both of you the chance to talk a little bit more about the fact that this really is the time to stand up and do something. And then I know that Bonnie, you wanted to add some more about how folks can get involved.
Yeah, thank you so much. The portal, the link, I know it has been shared out and is on our live streams, but just to say it out, GLSEN, GLSEN.org/T as in turtle, 9, the number, comment portal, all together, no spaces. So GLSEN.org/T9 comment portal. And I just want to say, yeah, the moment is critical for us. The deadline closes on Monday, September 12th. Our comment portal, however, will be closing at midnight on Monday, which means if you're getting up, you're having some coffee on Monday, it's going to be too late. So I really want you to go now, right after this, to that comment portal, add your comment. And Alexis talked to this earlier, but the reality is that people who are opposed to students' freedom to be themselves and to be safe at schools are flooding the comment portal with hate. The last time I checked, there were nearly 350,000 comments. Most comments get like a handful of comments submitted. And too many of these comments are saying things like, quote, it's illegal and indoctrination and woke ideology for trans students to be safe at school and to have equal access to school facilities and educational opportunities. So we're in a similar place to what CP described, where to get this proposed rule turned into a final rule, it's really so important that we show up and we are loudly, vocally, from all walks of life, showing up and sharing that we support this rule. That if we're a student who has experienced discrimination on the basis of gender identity, also sexual orientation, gender expression, that we're sharing that story, or maybe a family member is sharing that story, because it is hard. It is hard to continue to move this forward without showing up and saying that. We know the support is there, but I think a lot of times folks are like, I don't know, what do I say? And the good news is the comment portal makes it easy. We give you some examples, some areas where we actually think the rule could be stronger, or just use like clearer, more sort of user-friendly language. And so all that stuff is at the comment portal, but you can also just say, from your own, using your own words, why you think schools should be safe and not discriminate against trans, non-binary, and other LGBTQ plus students. So that's the most important thing. And I think, I'll just throw in one other mention, that after you submit your comments, you can head over to glisten.org/vote and make sure you're registered to vote. Or if you can't vote yet, you can pledge to vote, because ultimately safety is a minimum bar. We want schools to be inclusive, affirming, to celebrate trans and non-binary students, and to be fully welcome and inclusive of them. So to get over that minimum bar, we really need folks who are prioritizing that and centering that in their sort of policy platform, whether that's as a school board member, a judge, or a state legislator, or a member of Congress. So that's it. And thank you again. This has been a really rewarding conversation, and I really hope you'll get out there, share your voice of support.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Bonnie, for that. I'm so grateful to have you guys on right now. I know people are really looking for a way to get involved. And I did just want to clarify for folks that for these two comment portals, that the Title IX portal is going to close first. So Bonnie, you said by midnight this weekend, is that right?
Yeah, so 12 a.m. on Monday, but it's my Pacific time. So you can think of it as basically like before you go to sleep on Sunday, submit your comment. Because we are through regulations.gov, you could still submit a comment for the rest of the day. But if you're using the comment portal, just use the comment portal. It's easy. We make it easy. And that will close basically Sunday night after your bedtime.
Good to know. Yeah. So if you do one piece of this weekend, definitely do your Title IX comment saying that you support our LGBTQ students in school and their teachers and parents in the school community. And then for Protect Trans Health, you don't need to wait. Definitely do it as soon as you're able to, but you do have until October 3rd. So you do have a chance there to really, tell everybody about both of these. Make sure that you are spreading the word for us. It makes a huge difference. And then Alexis, I also wanted to give you the chance to sort of as we transition to some Q&A stuff. We got a great question from Janice, I believe, on Facebook. What does it take to have the Title IX rule change approved? I think folks maybe want to know a little bit about kind of what that process looks like.
Absolutely. So for both of these comment portals that are open up through the Department of Education and Health and Human Services, respectively, what's going to happen is that when these comment portals close, those departments are going to review each and every comment that's been submitted. They're going to take those into consideration, respond to a lot of them, and post all of that information publicly. And then they're going to start working on incorporating or deciding what to incorporate from those comments, if anything at all, and then move forward with the regulation. And so this is just another input for the administration to hear our voices and to take in, not just from the experts that they've been listening to and the community members they've been listening to so far, but anyone. And there's no limits on who can submit a comment. It's not even limited by things like citizenship or your voter registration or anything like that. So it's really important that if you're trans, non-binary, intersex, if you're LGBTQ plus, if you're an ally, if you've got friends, family, or students, folks that you work with, if you have any sort of perspective that you can offer into this rule about why it's important that we protect trans youth in schools, why it's important that we protect trans folks' access to healthcare, the administration needs to hear from you so that they can take those perspectives into account, decide if they need to make any changes to the rules, if they want to submit the rule as a final rule as it exists now. If they want to make any improvements to the rule, we've got some ideas about how they could improve that. And as Bonnie mentioned, you can see that on the GLSEN website at the Common Portal as well. And they'll take all of that under advisement and then figure out how to move forward and what the next step is going to be. It could be that they propose another draft. There could be another comment portion. It could be they accept the rule as it is. There's a couple different pathways they could go. But what's important to remember right now is that they need to hear from us so that they can figure out how to move forward, both at the Department of Education and in Health and Human Services. Bonnie, is there anything that you want to add to that?
No, I thought that was perfect.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And one thing I just want to add, since I also saw we had Jennifer in the chat asking about what comments or what kind of comments I think that I'd be asking. I definitely want to emphasize to folks, like we've mentioned a couple of times, but you really, there's a lot of people, what do I say? I support trans kids and trans people and trans lives. I mean, really, don't feel like it has to be a dissertation, but it makes such a difference to show that people are willing to leave that comment. So don't worry, it doesn't have to be groundbreaking if you're worried about it, but if you do have that personal story or more you want to share, we are reading them, we do appreciate it, and we do hear you. We're really, really grateful for it. This is really wonderful. I'm taking a look to make sure that
and just to add to that, Tekla, on both of these Common Portal websites, we have questions to help get you started and what the response can be. We've got resources, we've got notes and talking points from the proposed rule themselves, or some ideas about how things could be improved, all to sort of just help folks as they're crafting their own comment. And you said it perfectly, Tekla. It can be something as simple as I support trans kids, as I support trans health, or you can tell your own personal story. You can just answer some of the questions that we've put to help guide you. The important thing is that you make your voice heard, no matter how much or how little you have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to make sure we hit any other questions. And if folks are watching and have questions, we have a couple minutes. You can certainly leave them in the chat. We did actually get a question about how these regulations might affect gender affirming care and insurance. Are there pieces of this that this is more a Protect Trans Health question? So I'm going to bring our Protect Trans Health folks back on, bring CP back on, as we have all of us here for a couple minutes as we answer some questions. And then CP, is there anything you want to tell folks about how this works with insurance? Are these regulations going to affect health insurance and what they have to cover?
Yeah, so it gets a little complicated depending on what type of insurance you have. But basically, the short answer is the regulations do require insurers who receive federal funding to not discriminate and to cover transition-related care. Now, it doesn't necessarily go into, like, this specific type of care has to be covered. So, there might be, it isn't necessarily going to resolve questions about whether, like facial feminization surgery or electrolysis or whatever is like going to be covered by your insurance, at least not by the regulations themselves. But they will make it mandatory for insurance companies to cover transition-related care more broadly. It gets a little bit complicated when we're talking about companies that offer what's called self-insurance, where they pay for their own coverage for their employees. In general, the theory is that since most of those plans are managed by insurance companies that are covered by the ACA and Section 1557, that those plans should also be covered. But it gets a little bit more complicated, and it's really in the weeds there. But in general, yes, this should make transition-related care much more accessible on the insurance side. And it will also make it easier if something is denied for you to be able to raise a complaint with the Department of Health and Human Services or to bring litigation yourself.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's really helpful. And then we also we have a great Title IX question. It's true that a lot of people, when they hear the phrase Title IX, they're thinking about sports as the thing it's most associated with, although, of course, that's not the only thing that it touches. And so how does this proposed rule around Title IX intersect with school sports? And Alexis or Bonnie, whoever wants to handle on that one.
Yeah, this proposed rule actually announced that a separate rule will address school sports. We're, of course, deeply disappointed and frustrated and saddened by this. But we are urging the department, we know the rule is announced, and we're urging the Department of Education to move forward with that. And we really need to put it simply, we need the federal government to get this right. And one thing that we do see in this proposed rule, as they announce that there's a separate rule coming, is some language that's confusing, that could be misread or misinterpreted as saying that it's okay to exclude transgender and non-binary students. We cannot afford that confusion when the consequences are safety and belonging and our children's right to a future. And so we need those elements, those lines, they need to go, and the separate rule needs to get it right so that all students have access to the benefits of school sports, which we know are, so many abundant benefits. And students should have the freedom to be themselves and pursue their dreams. And that includes on the playing fields. So that is the connection to sports. More to come soon. But with this proposed rule, what we're asking is that they remove that harmful, confusing language. There's a couple lines in there that they included when announcing the separate rule, and that needs to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Alexis, did you want to add anything about that piece of it, about the athletics piece?
Yeah, I mean, just to point out that the administration announced a separate rulemaking process for the sports question in general, and just the thing to remember is that trans folks, trans students, are just trying to live out their lives. Whether it's access to safe places to go to the bathroom, whether it's respect from their teachers and how they're being referred to, or being able to participate in extracurricular activities with their classmates. And that's truly the important baseline that we're talking about in all of these things. And that's what Title IX 50 years ago was intended to help address. It's how how folks operate in the educational system to make sure that there's safety, to make sure there's parity. And so whether we're talking about sports, whether we're talking about in the classroom or teacher interactions or going to the bathroom, that's the important part, is to just let folks exist and to make sure that they can access the education that they deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think we will wrap up a little bit here. But one thing I did want to address, I did see a great question about what else folks can do besides leaving a comment themselves. We talked about making sure, bug everybody in your life to leave a comment, because it really does make a difference. So there's that. And then the other thing that might help as you navigate this, as you in your own life talk to folks, is really try to push back on those myths. I think we've seen a lot of really anti-trans myths that are confusing, particularly around gender affirming care for young people, including these attacks on doctors providing gender affirming care. And it may help to emphasize to folks that gender affirming care for young people is extremely monitored and safe. It's something that, you know, kids go through with their medical provider, with their parents. It's such a personal decision. And also that there's a lot of misinformation about things like surgeries for young people, which is just a lot of disinformation and really not accurate. So that may help as you're talking to folks that may have seen a lot of this disinformation flying around. I wanted to give folks a chance if you all had anything else you wanted to say before we signed off.
Absolutely. To answer and offer some additional things under this question specifically, you know, it's so important that we have federal protections in both of these areas. In education, the federal government has a very important role in making sure that the educational environments that our students are experiencing are what we need them to be or what they deserve. But it doesn't stop there, right? So much of education is controlled by local policy, by state boards of education, by local school boards. And so it's really important to not only engage with national organizations that are pushing for federal protections, but also to pay attention to what's going on in your state. So much of the state legislation that we saw in the past in the past year and a half, 2 years, has been focused on the existence of trans and non-binary folks and intersex folks, students, as they're experiencing things in school and as they're operating around in their lives. So paying attention to what's going on, not only at the federal level, but at the state and local level, what's going on in your school board, the discussions that they're having about curriculum and about books. I know in my college town in Texas, in Huntsville, Texas, there's a conversation where there was a pride display taken down and they shut down the library and removed all young adult books. And I'm really, really proud of the community there that's pushing back against things like that. And that's something that national organizations, we try as hard as we can to pay attention to, but our bandwidth and our focus is on federal. And so, you know, to point towards the local, the state and local organizations that are also doing that work, organizations like the Transgender Education Network of Texas, like Equality Illinois, wherever you are, there is a group that is living and breathing what's happening on the local level. And so pay attention to what's going on national, but also look around your own neighborhood and find out the organizers and the activists there and how you can engage to make sure that trans folks are protected in your town.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, it can take you know, one loud, awful person to derail everything, right? And it can oftentimes, you know, one person, two people at a school board meeting can turn the tide, and you can have a huge impact there when you look locally. And then also, Bonnie, so we're talking about this, and I think this is top of mind for so many people. Is there anything that you recommend for folks who, whether their parents have a kid in school or people maybe even who don't have that, but are there ways that people can kind of show their support when schools or school districts get attacked for trying to be inclusive?
Yeah, I mean, I would really echo what Alexis was saying in terms of showing you can attend school board meetings, be the voice of support. You can run for school board office, be the elected official who is supportive and inclusive and advocating for policies that all students, you know, for safe, inclusive schools for transgender, non-binary, and all LGBTQ plus students. That all students should have that. You can be that voice. You can be that elected official. There is support. I do think you can, you know, I also want to lift up, you know, that engagement with local organizations. In many states, GLSEN has a chapter. You can get involved there, but absolutely, the Equality Federation, you can find your state affiliate that's working on these issues in your state. And of course, community level engagement. I think there are a lot of opportunities out there, and it's just so important that we're showing up and saying what we know is true, what we know is right, and we know what we know all students deserve, and you know, getting engaged, because those that are opposed to safe and inclusive schools are fired up, and they see this as a wedge issue, and you know, a way to sort of drive against policies that are supportive of communities broadly that experience marginalization. So we need to be activated, and insofar, like, to the extent we can plug in locally and be that voice, 100%. And then, yeah, there's always opportunities to support, affirming and supportive federal legislation as well. And you can, subscribe and stay in touch. We'll share more things.
Absolutely. Yeah. And definitely, if you want to sign up for at GLSEN.org, you can sign up for emails at Ncte at transequality.org. You can sign up for our emails as well. And you'll also have that option, I believe, on the Protect Trans Health portal. And I will leave the links once again in the comments so that folks have them. And we really appreciate all of you watching now, watching in the future. After this is no longer live, but it will be on our page, so you'll be able to share this as well if you have folks in your life you want to listen in. And we are so looking forward to seeing your comments. Our last note, GLSEN also has a voting portal for voting. We weren't specifically talking about political stuff since there's rules as nonprofits. We can't electioneer too much, but there is an option to pledge to vote if you're not 18 yet. So if you have youth in your life that want to get involved, you have that as well. And I've just put our Title IX comment portal back in here. And I am just so grateful to all of you for being here, to all of you watching. Thank you all so much. And hopefully we will talk to you all soon. Have a good night, everyone.